Hi, welcome to our webinar on Taste of the Future. I believe many of you wanted to come to our event. Today we'll have a bit of a shorter agenda, so you won't be able to play with any of our AI tools, but we'll do our best to give you a very inspirational presentation on Taste of the Future. During the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, and we will try and come back to you later on the questions. My name is Tris Verhulst. I work as a brand strategist at Ipsos E&O, and I help brands define their positioning. And with the help of the global trend study that we run, we also support brands in defining what role they can play in the future. And I'm here together with René.
Yes, thank you, Tris. I'm René Goud. I'm a qualitative researcher at Ipsos E&O. Although I'm very all-round, I have a weak spot for innovation and food. So that was the reason for me doing this together with Tris.
Good. Let's go to the agenda for today. So we have three topics to inspire you. The first one is setting the scene and explaining the role of health. Then we'll dive into the taste of the future, looking at how the global trends relate to the food and beverage industry. And last but not least, we'll have a look at how brands, or what role brands can play in this future. So let's start with setting the scene. A little bit of a background. What is the Ipsos Global Trends Study? So it's a study that we run every 3 years, and we've been doing this for almost 10 years. And we interview across the world 50,000 citizens across 50 countries, which leads to 5 million data points. So it's one of the largest public opinion studies ever. And what we do in this study is really try to understand what are values that are relevant to consumers today. Based on all this information, we look at, okay, what are the big shifts happening in society? And this leads to 9 macro trends. I won't go through all of them, but these macro trends are really a clustering of the big values and societal shifts that we see across the world. For example, one of them is really about globalization fractures. So it's about what's happening with the geopolitics and how that's impacting people. We have, for example, Techno Wonder, which is all about what AI is doing, how the world is changing, but also how people are becoming much more mindful of using tech. And I'll highlight a few more, but for example, Splinter Societies is all about the values that people have, and then we see that the world is polarizing more and more, and so on, going all the way to escape to individualism, where we see that people are focused sometimes more on their own world and their own society in this world, which is quite uncertain at the moment. But these are the bigger macro trends, the bigger shifts that we see in society across the world. But of course, the food and beverage industry is not immune to these societal shifts. We see that geopolitics are impacting the local and global resources. We also see, of course, the impact of health regulation, which have an impact on the legality of weight drugs, but also food labeling, for example. We see food choices are becoming more and more a declaration of values, especially in this polarizing world. But also there's, of course, also inflation and uncertain economy, which drives people towards private label and seeking for trust in brands. So that's just why we are looking to explain why we're looking at all these trends and all these changes to help you also understand better how to connect with your consumers. One other thing is we, of course, all know that health is a key driver of change in the food and beverage industry. So health is important to people. We see that more and more. It was one of the big global trends as well. And food plays a very big role in this. 84% of our consumers globally believe that of all the things they can do to maintain their health, eating right is the most important. But we also see the rise of GLP-1 can have a very big impact on the food and beverage industry. So for example, here we see that more than half of the Americans are already interested in taking a drug to reduce their cravings to eat, helping them to lose weight. And last but not least, we see also the limited alcohol consumption, with younger generations being much more mindful about drinking. Again, looking at numbers from the US, we see that 46% of Gen Z versus 28% of baby boomers worry about the impact of alcohol. So we see definitely changes, and health plays a very big role in this, which is why we did also a qualitative study to understand what is the role of health for the Dutch consumers.
Yes, thank you, Trish. Yeah, we were so interested in what was the role of food and food and healthy food in the Netherlands, that we thought we needed a deep dive qualitatively. And what we did is we interviewed 16 Dutch consumers, and we split it into 2 different generations, because we had the feeling, based on the desk research Trish did, that there was a difference between Gen Z and Gen X, quite the extremes. What we were also, hoping to find these extremes, and definitely also a spread on education level, because perhaps also education plays a role here. What we saw for everybody, is that health, because it's good to understand what people define, what is health for the Dutch consumer, and we saw with everybody that it's all about the high quality of life, enhancing happiness, and that's what feeling healthy is all about. That is feeling good, and they all emphasized that food plays an important role. Even it's qualitative. Somebody stated it's 70% of my health is determined by food, and the rest is 30%. And the rest you can think about the activities like sports or being together, or all that different aspects that plays a role in feeling good. But food, yes, that's an important thing. But how do they determine what is healthy food? And we came across a number of indicators which you can determine, like the intrinsically indicators of healthy food, like a product as a whole, so fruit and vegetables and nuts. Everybody thinks that that's quite a healthy product, but some also look at ingredients. Like, is there something bad in the ingredients? Like soy, could there are people thinking that's a bit a bad ingredient, or a very healthy one, like fibers. Nutrients, like micros or micro nutrients, and there comes up the proteins, of course, fats, carbohydrates, but also salt, sodium. So those are the ingredients, nutrients they are looking at. But also from an intrinsic, extrinsic perspective, they look at claims. No added sugar, or rich in fiber, those typical claims in the front of the pack. But labeling plays a role, organic, fair trade, those different labels from external parties or organizations. And brand as such, a brand can also already give a feeling of quality or trust, or the different the way it is produced. But what we also saw, there were also some barriers when it comes to healthy food choices, and a big one, and it's also due to the economy, is the price. The prices are rising and rising, and that's really something that is also noticed by consumers. And we had very diverse set of respondents, but everybody mentions that if you do your groceries, it's way more expensive than a couple of years ago. So it's a very top of mind thing. But on top of that, what's also a barrier to make the right choices is the misleading information, or perceived misleading information. As you can imagine, the youngsters, the Gen Z, look look a lot on social media, do a lot with them, but they also think sometimes that that's the truth. And there are things mentioned that when you look at it from an you could say scientific perspective, it's definitely not the truth. So they make different choices than would be then it's not a healthy choice in the end. But also what is also there is a kind of a distrust on the claims, for instance. It's a perceived mistrust, because sometimes it's stated no added sugar, and then they look at the label and then they see there's sugar in it. So they feel they are misled in that place. But also the Nutri-Score, very difficult label for a lot of people, because it is of course related to all the products in that specific category. But seeing a pizza with a B Nutri-Score, it's quite weird, because everybody knows that a pizza is not healthy. So that's also, it's all together leading to distrust. But how do they go about it? Because it is quite a big, a different way of going about healthy food. And we saw during our interviews that people were behaving differently, but also thinking about it differently. And we used our Syncytium thinking to develop profiles. And we used the framework with, in the middle, everybody wants to have feeling good. Everybody wants to feel good about themselves and about their health. But looking at the different axes, you have the individual axis, the one on the carefree, to control, and the other one is living in the now, and that's kind of for now it's building your body, or taking care of your body. In the other hand, it's living longer, protecting your body, so thinking more into the future. And when you think further, we developed 4 different profiles, from the energy hunter to the appearance lover, the mindful hedonist, and the safety seeker. And I want to talk a little bit more about these 4 profiles we found. The first one is the energy hunter, and they are, they are bursting of energy, and they really have a very active life from early in the morning till late in the evening, and they see food as their source of energy. So, okay, they like to eat, but it's also very functional, and they make very functional choices in this, and they use food to support their active lifestyle. You see a lot of gym guys here, and of course not stereotyping, but it was a coincidence, I think, that there were more the guys than the girls who were in this profile. But they look, for instance, at the proteins, on the fibers. They are a fresh product, but all very functional. And that's so for them it's also easy, because they don't have that very emotional relation with food. They also go for convenient and easy, and it's all helping them to reach their goals, to do all those active things in their lives. And then we have the other one, the appearance lover. And yes, it is a picture with a she, and I think, well, that's what we came across in their interviews. It's more about the visual looks, the effect of food on their you could say their weight, but also on their skin, on their how they radiate or they glow, like they call it nowadays. So it also a very short-term goal of how they go about healthy food, but from really another perspective. So they look at the calories, they avoid soy, for instance, because soy can be bad for your skin, is the belief. And also the carbs and the fats, because that's related to the calories. So and omega oil, that's good for your hair, and well, all those beauty related appearance. And these are also, of course, there is a lot of social media going on in across the younger profiles in the younger generation. What we see here is that these with those beauty ideals, it's even more influenced by social media. So these two more younger profiles, you see, they are really focused on the immediate benefits of food. So what they eat now has an effect on a very short term. And they learn a lot about it via the social media, all different sources, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, everything comes across, and they are very open to new products. If something is tried out there and has a bit of an interesting story, they will try. And that's also what we see, and that's also not only in our qualitative research, but also something we see on a broader perspective, is that the brand loyalty of this generation is quite limited. They are really looking towards what it offers them, which benefits it has, and that's all related to the ingredients and the nutrients, but not per se to the brand. And that was also something that we also came across in this research. What is also an important thing to note is that this group doesn't have that much budget. Because of all the limitations, also the age. They're just in their first job or just a student. So that's also something to keep in mind. Then we go to the older profiles. Here we have the mindful hedonist, and they balance, and it's between brackets, health and taste, because of course, they want to live longer and they want to have a high quality of life, also over 10 years, whatever. But they find it quite difficult to be that strict and to stick to their healthy eating habit, because these are the ones who really love their wine and their cheese in the evening, and with these days like this, having a terrace with friends and very socially orientated. Yes, they look at healthy food, but it's kind of a struggle. And what they are looking at is very specifically the product as a whole. Of course, everybody wants to have a fresh product, but these are even also more into the organic and more into from the farmer, because it's tasteful on the one hand, and this is quite, well, we have the impression that they can also afford it a bit more. And yes, they look at carbs and fats and everything, but yes, it also has to stay a bit fun. Kind of cheater. And then the last one, the safety keeper, very strict, very traditional. Here we see the most potatoes, vegetable, meat combinations. They don't want to take risks in their life. They have kind of, I always had this and it was always good. These ones are the most brand loyal, we have the impression, because they always had this on their sandwich, or they always used this brand of butter, and it was nice, it's tasteful, so keep it this way. So from that perspective, the most risk avoiding profile of the four. Combining these two more older profiles, what you see really more long-term focused, and considering the future, want to stay healthy for their children, their grandchildren, and they look into a more established knowledge sources. And of course, Keuringsdienst voor Waarde is also a source they look at, but also the Voeding Centrum, for instance. So less social media than the other group, what you could imagine, and more brand loyal. So getting to know the four different profiles.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Renee. Now we heard very much about the Dutch consumers and how they look at health and food and the role it plays. Let's now have a look at what the future is going to look like. And here again, we look more at a global perspective. We will indicate some local nuances, but we mainly focus on the global framework. What we did here is, so we had the big global macro trends that we saw, which is all about societal shifts and changes in values. Now, how did we now, what we did for this part is we looked at how does that apply to the food and beverage category. And in order to build a food and beverage trend framework, what we did was look at different signals in the world. with regard to food and beverages. And signals, we looked through social media listening, and we used a number of our AI tools to identify what are the big signals related to food and beverages. Now, this led to eventually 6 big food and beverage trends, starting with authenticity and localization, where we see that consumers are increasingly seeking out authentic food experiences. One of the things we see from our research is that 66% globally believe that, or indicate that they're willing to spend extra for products that are produced locally. The second one is about diverging consumption. So this is all about food and retail industries are kind of splitting between affordability and premium indulgence. So we see with the inflation that people, a lot of people are also moving towards private label and seeing that they are actually offering quite decent qualities as well. So as a brands, it's important to figure out what role are you going to play in this new situation. Then we have conscious health and dietary awareness. As we heard, health is a big topic. Consumers are increasingly focusing on holistic health. So it's not just about physical health, but also about mental well-being. And this we see very strongly that the gap between the importance of focusing on physical health versus mental health is becoming much smaller. In 2019, there was still a gap of 9%, while now it's only 3% that is more focused on physical health. Then we go to digital influence and convenience. So this is all about digital platforms shaping consumer preferences, but also the increasing need of convenience, going for more online purchases. So we all know how much people are putting pictures of food online, so that really influences also how people eat, what kind of flavors they see and recognize. But especially also here we see the social commerce plays a big role, using social media to be inspired on what you buy, but also immediately buying it through social platforms. Then we have sustainability imperative, which is almost becoming a hygiene factor, but it is really important to be eco-friendly. Consumers want to make eco-friendly choices, but they do not want to make big sacrifices. So this is an important element to keep in mind, even though it might not be the reason to justify a higher price. Then last but not least, we have technological advancements. Of course, with the introduction of AI last year, we really see that there's a lot more happening in terms of automation, but you also see a lot of new technologies coming up with biotech reshaping food and retail experiences. With the online food delivery, of course, becoming bigger and bigger. Now, we will dive into a few of these trends to bring them to life, just to give you a flavor of what we do when we look at big trends. So starting with authenticity and localization. So here we see a few of the numbers, which is all about I'm willing to spend extra for a product that is produced locally. Even in the Netherlands, we see that it's 54% believe that they are willing to spend more for local products. Local products, it's all about the rising fuel cost and the environmental concerns that are driving people to choose more local and sustainable farm-to-table foods. One of the brands that played very strongly into this trend has been Koopmans with Nedertarwe, using Dutch-grown wheat to give a low-emission alternative for imported grains. Another element that we see within this trend is the nostalgic nibbles. So in these uncertain times, we see that people are referring back to things that they know, that they're familiar with. And nostalgic food flavors offer some kind of a comfort, a familiarity. They refer back to their own childhoods. And one of the brands that played into this was the General Mills reintroducing Dunkaroos, which was a very popular vanilla cookie snack, which you could dunk in your milk. And that has become very popular in America among millennials.
And if we look at the Dutch profiles, we see that it definitely links to the two more older profiles, the mindful hedonist and the safety seeker, but for different reasons. The mindful hedonist, who is really on taste and on the nice flavors, high quality, they believe that when it comes from the neighbors, you could say, local products, that it also is a kind of a guarantee of a better quality or a higher taste. And the safety seeker is the things a bit different. They think, yeah, when it's not produced en masse, it's perhaps more safer and a better choice for me than something mass produced in a unknown country. So it gives them an extra sense of security.
Right, then we go to the conscious health and dietary awareness. So this is all about being healthy, being also mindful about what you eat and how that impacts both physical and mental health. One of the things that we already indicated, but the sober shift is definitely an element that's happening. Especially among younger generations, we see that choosing non-alcoholic drinks or low alcoholic drinks for wellness and is an important element. It's all about mindful moderation. It doesn't mean they never drink. It just means that they're much more aware and mindful of the impact. Another example from the US is the Soy, who offers non-alcoholic aperitifs made with natural adaptogens, promising a buzz without a booze. And it's very popular, or it seems to be gaining a lot of traction. Then we have mindful eating, which is all about portion controlled snacks and meals that are popular. So brands are promoting moderation, but also nutrient dense foods. So really giving people the idea that also the food that they eat will actually benefit themselves physically. An example from the Netherlands is Upfront, which is a very fast-growing Dutch company that sells transparent sport nutrition and supplements. And what's interesting, if you look at the pack, maybe I'm a bit old school, but I look at the pack and I think, oh, what's interesting and appealing about this? But it basically just at the front has a whole list of ingredients. But it's incredibly popular among Dutch students, and our youngest colleagues in the office here are also very happy about this product and are like, this is amazing. So there is something with putting ingredients in the front and giving people really transparent idea of what's in it, and also so that they can see how they can improve their health. Which also leads to more functional ingredients, so focusing on healthier foods which are enriched with fibers or fermented proteins. So really this idea of superfoods that can help increase your gut health, your immunity. Here an example from the UK is Better Nature, who is very much focused on harnessing the natural fermentation.
Yeah, and there you see that the two younger profiles, although everybody is in this into this trend, the younger profiles are even more, because they are actively looking for a healthy choice, and they also are very open to and keen on transparency. So that's also why you see here the buzz around Upfront. So, and that's also what we learned in from the interviews.
Good, then going to the last trend, which we'll dive into detail, is divergent consumption. So of course we see that inflation is worrying people. It's among the top 3 most worrying topics in my country for many people. What we see here is, of course, the rise of private label. So due to inflation and economic uncertainty, you see that private label continues to rise to be popular, not only with those who are struggling to get by. And here a recent example is of Jumbo launching its own new brand, Jumbo's, which sits very much in between actually the private label and the A brand space, offering high quality products but for a moderate price. Another example is smart budgeting. So that's all about economic pressures actually pushing consumers toward budget options, but also people looking for alternatives or ways to still enjoy without spending too much. An example of this would be, for example, takeaway meals. So it's ready to heat versions or ready to eat takeaway, more luxury solutions that are, you know, cheaper than going out to a restaurant, but still give you the feeling of, hey, I'm treating myself. And then the last one is then the other extreme, which is all about luxury indulgence. So that's more for the affluent and premium consumers who really seek premium limited editions, really focusing on high exclusivity. So here, for example, you have Sue, which is an online luxury meal delivery service offering meals by well-known chefs delivered at your home.
Yeah, what we see in the profiles is that the younger profiles, also driven by their budget restrictions, are more into that smart budgeting in the private labels, but that's also driven by the fact that they are not that brand loyal and they just look what the product offers. So if it offers the right things, that they are not well, they think they do a smart choice buying a private label. From the other hand, you have the mindful hedonist, and they are into the luxury. So they treat themselves with good bread from a bakery, high premium quality products from the traiteur, or the good wine from a wine store. So they spoil themselves by adding these luxury ingredient products to their daily life.
All right, let's now have a look at, you know, what's the role of brands? What can you do in this changing world? So René already mentioned it a few times, but power of trust is really important. Trust in brands seems to be reduced, and especially among the younger consumers, there is a limited loyalty also within the food and beverage industry. And this has a lot to do, of course, with, for example, what does the Nutri-Score tell me? But also Gen Z is very much influenced by influencers, but do they always tell the truth? Also, a lot of people wonder, like, what is healthy to me? Can I get personal advice? But also you see a lot of greenwashing happening. So people do wonder, like, can I trust what brands say? Are they really better for the world? And that's also a question. Does contributing to society still matter? Well, you believe it does. What we see in our global trend research is that 81% of consumers believe that companies have a duty to make a societal contribution. And yes, we all know there is a big say-do gap, which we also see back. Consumers do believe they themselves have already done enough. So they're really looking to brands and companies and governments to make the change and to contribute to society. Does it then matter? Does it actually influence people's choice? Well, we can see from our own research that it does. Societal expectations do influence the choice that people make. And how do we know this? Like we used to, when we did a big brand driver analysis to identify what drives brand choice, we would look at functional expectations and we look at emotional expectations. Now, we did recently research to understand, okay, what if we add to the mix societal expectations, which is about what are the elements that, you know, how does my brand contribute to the world? And then you see that actually the impact of these societal expectations is almost as big as the impact of more emotional, how does a brand make me feel, and the more functional expectations, what does it actually deliver to me? So societal expectations do matter. It is important to contribute to society. However, it should be positioned as a co-benefit. It always has to be a good balance between what's in it for me versus what's in it for the world. And this, especially among Gen Z, is a very important realization, because we've done also a big sustainability segmentation where we look at different profiles and how they look at contributing to society. And then you can see that the activist group, which is a group that's really about, you know, putting in effort and making sacrifices to improve the world, that is actually the smallest group among Gen Z. While looking at what is the biggest in Gen Z, there we see that it's all about discerning realists. So like René already mentioned, they're looking for tangible solutions and tangible proof that things are changing, but also that it has a positive impact for themselves. What can you now do in this? How do you navigate all these uncertain societies? It's important to find ways to justify a higher price as an A brand. So you really need to have a good story, which you can do by building trust through focusing on the values that that are important to you, but also that your target group cares about. When you contribute to society, which is important, make sure you position it as a co-benefit and not as a way to justify the price. But also be mindful that Gen Z is very critical. So being transparent in order to build that trust is really crucial. So if we now look at the 3 trends we discussed, what can you do? Looking at authenticity and localization, we see it's really about the idea of that purity, simplicity, but also very clean and transparent labeling on where things are coming from, how does the supply chain work. Looking at divergent consumption, here we can see 4 different roles that a brand could play. So you could become the true, very high-end luxury, very indulging, which will not be affordable for everyone. Or you could focus more on that idea of the tiny luxury, that you say, okay, I am more expensive, but it's a small, it only takes a small part of the budget. It should be an expensive ice cream that, still people will be like, okay, for this little thing, I will spend a little bit more because I do want to indulge. The other option is to focus more on what, for example, Jumbo's did and be a brand that actually offers added value, decent quality for a moderate price. Or it's more the other extreme, which is really offering something that is affordable to everyone, even for those who are struggling to get by. And now last but not least, looking at conscious health and dietary awareness, there we see options for looking at personalized nutrition. How can you really personalize how people can become more healthy? Focusing also on mental benefits, but also even on social benefits. How can it help me be more strong and feel more strong in my social engagement? And if you're going to offer, really health benefits, make sure you also connect with healthcare professionals to ensure that trust can be built. And this was our story for today. Just one last slide to explain a bit how else we can support you with activating trends and foresight. So we've given you a bit of an insight on how we apply it to specific industries, but we can also further localize it and customize it to specific markets by doing qualitative research and talking to consumers and figuring out like, okay, what's happening in your local market within the category. We can help you build a category vision. So really look at, okay, what is the future of this category or the future of your brand? We can help with future projections. So this can either be looking at what are the different scenarios that the world is going to look like, or also look at, okay, if you have different target groups, how are they going to change in the future? Are they about to grow? Are they becoming smaller? And last but not least, we can help you fill your innovation pipeline by understanding micro and macro context, what is happening, how are things changing, and what should you do in terms of innovations. So if you have any more questions or want to know more, then you can always reach out to one of us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.